Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our monthly meeting of the Cobb County Board of Zoning Appeals. Before we go any further, I'd like to ask everyone who can to please stand and pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Also, before we call the meeting to order, if everybody will silence their cell phones, that would be greatly appreciated. For those of you who do not have a copy of the agenda or who are attending for the first time, we will concern ourselves with cases that are on consent. These are the cases that have been reviewed by the board and by the professionals from various departments in the county and to which there is no known opposition. We have discussed them in our work session. Certain staff comments and stipulations have been made, and we do not anticipate any further discussion is needed for a decision. So as we go forward, the County Zoning Division Manager, John Peterson, will read each case into the record. Mr. Peterson will ask you to raise your hand as your case is called to signify you are present. If you are here in opposition to a case that's currently on consent, Mr. Peterson will ask you to identify yourself as that case is read into the record. We will then pull that case off of consent and hear it as part of our regular case agenda. We will then vote on all of the cases still on consent at one time. Once we have approved the cases on consent, we will move to our regular case agenda. With that, we are ready to address the consent cases. Mr. Peterson?
And thank you, Madam Chair. And before we get going on that, there are 3 cases on today's printed agenda which have been continued and held, and these cases will not be heard today. First case is variance case V44, Aqua Design Pools and Spas LLC. This case has been continued by the staff until the July 13th, 2022 Board of Zoning Appeals hearing, so V44 will not be heard today. Variance case V52, Alfreda Cox niece. This case was continued by the staff until the July 13th, 2022 Board of Zoning Appeals variance hearing, so V52 will not be heard today. And lastly, variance case V54, Total Imaging, Inc. This case was continued by the staff until the July 13th, 2022 Board of Zoning Appeals variance hearing. So V54 will not be heard today. And with that, Madam Chair, I'm ready to start the consent agenda. Cobb County Board of Zoning Appeals variance hearing consent agenda for June 15th, 2022. First case on consent is variance case V50. Nicholas Paplikos and Ellen Paplikos request a variance to reduce the rear setback from required 35 feet to 20 feet in land lots 994 and 999 of the 17th District. The property is located on the south side of Stratton Chase, west of Belmont Crest Drive. The Board of Zoning Appeals recommends approval, subject to stormwater management comments. Is the applicant present? Right here. Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case V50? Let the record show there's no one opposed. Variance case V51, Eric Munder requests a variance to number 1, reduce the rear setback for an accessory structure under 650 square feet for an existing approximately 242 square foot shed and overhang from required 35 feet to 7 feet. Number 2, reduce the side setback for an accessory structure under 650 square feet for an existing approximately 242 square foot shed and overhang from required 10 feet to 7 feet adjacent to the east property line. Number 3, reduce the setbacks for an accessory structure over 650 square feet for an existing approximately 926 square foot garage and carport from required 100 feet to 30 feet adjacent to the rear property line and to 0 feet adjacent to the east property line. And number 4, increase the maximum allowable impervious coverage from required 35% to 36% in land lot 100 of the 1st District. The property is located on the north side of Kings Valley Drive, east of Mountain Trace. The Board of Zoning Appeals recommends approval, subject to stormwater management comments. Is the applicant present?
I am.
Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to the variance case of V51?
No.
Nope. All right, let the record show there's no one opposed. Variance case of V53, Craig Marbach requests a variance to number 1, reduce the front setback from required 35 feet to 29 feet, which is existing. And number 2, allow an accessory use, which is a proposed pool, hot tub, and deck to be located to the side of the principal building in land lot 538 of the 16th District. The property is located at the southern terminus of Lassiter Manor Drive, south of Lassiter Road. The Board of Zoning Appeals recommends approval, subject to stormwater management comments. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case V53? Let the record show is no one opposed. Variance case of V55, C. Robert Neal requests a variance to increase the maximum allowable impervious coverage from 40% to 57.7% in land lot 8 of the first district. The property is located on the south side of Windmead Park, east of Woodlawn Drive. The Board of Zoning Appeals recommends approval, subject to number 1, existing gutters and downspouts to go to the site drains. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case of V55? Nope. Let the record show that no one's opposed.
Can I respond? This is not what I'm applying for.
Do we pull that from here, and we'll talk about it after consent?
Okay. All right, we'll pull variance case V55 off the agenda and put that in its regular order. Variance case V56, Givens Development Group LLC requests a variance to number 1, reduce the rear setback for an accessory structure under 650 square feet for an approximately 576 square foot garage, required 35 feet to 9 feet, which is existing, and to number 2, allow an accessory structure and approximately 576 square foot garage to be located closer to the side street right-of-way line than the principal building, which is existing, in land lot 892 of the 16th district. The property is located on the northeast corner of Pleasant View Circle and Sill Mill Road. The Board of Zoning Appeals recommends approval, subject to traffic comments. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case V56?
No.
Let the record show is no one opposed. Variance case V57, Ashley Barton requests a variance to number 1, reduce the side setback for an accessory structure under 144 square feet for an existing 35 square foot outdoor fireplace, required 5 feet to 4 feet, and number 2, allow pool equipment to be located to the side of the house rather than behind the house in land lot 484 of the 16th district. The property is located on the south side of Bryant Point Drive, east of Bryant Lane. The Board of Zoning Appeals recommends approval. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case V57? Let the record show that no one opposed. Variance case of V59, Maya Moore, as trustee of the Maya Moore Declaration of Trust dated July 20th, 2017. I request a variance to number 1, allow a second electrical meter on a residential lot. Number 2, allow an accessory structure and approximately 832 square foot covered carport to the front of the principal building, which is existing. Number 3, reduce the setback for an accessory structure over 650 square feet for an approximately 832 square foot covered carport from required 100 feet to 37 feet, adjacent to the east property line, which is existing. And number 4, allow parking and/or maneuvering of vehicles on a non-hardened and treated surface, which is gravel, in land lot 395 of the 17th district. The property is located on the west side of Burdett Road, north of Pebblebrook Road. The Board of Zoning Appeals recommends approval, subject to number 1, fire department comments, and number 2, may not be used for residential purposes. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case of V59?
No.
Let the record show no one opposed.
Can I approach briefly, Madam Chair?
I need to correct something on the setback if I can.
Okay, variance case V60, Loudermilk Homes requests a variance to allow an accessory use, which is a pool, to the side of the principal building in land lot 1053 of the 16th district. The property is located on the southeast corner of Gunpowder Lane and Robinson Road. The Board of Zoning Appeals recommends approval. Is the applicant present?
Yes, sir.
Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case V60?
No.
Let the record show no one opposed. And that completes the consent agenda, agenda, Mr. Chairman and Board, with the exception of V55, which is going to be taken off consent and put it in its normal order.
Brian, if we have, Mr. Johnson, comments from the representative prior to us voting, should we hear them now?
That's at the discretion of the board. They
Yes,
can
okay, we'd
certainly
like to,
entertain it.
Mr. Rosen, please come to the podium.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry to jump in. For the record, Adam Rosen on behalf of the Maya Moore Trust. This is V59. The only thing that I think needs to be clarified is there was a site plan submitted when we revised the application to include to include the gravel parking variance and another setback variance. The setback measurement on that site plan changed for the accessory structure for the carport, and I think 37 feet is a little bit larger than what needs to be reduced down to. So if we can just have it reference the site plan that we submitted, that would correct that. And I just want to...
The one we had originally?
37 feet, I think, is what was originally on the site plan. When we submitted revisions to the variance request, there was also a revised site plan, and it changed that setback distance. And so I don't want that variance reduction to be incorrect. So I'm suggesting, I guess, that if we reference that site plan instead.
Yeah. Which one are you referencing for do you have a copy of the site plan with you where you can point that out?
Yes. Yeah, it's a site plan that's dated May 25th, 2022.
Okay, yeah, that is not the one we have. Do you have the one from May with you? You can give it-
I do. Yep, and I
Give
think
it
that,
to Cornelius
I think
Hill.
I think that is the site plan. It was submitted early enough that it should be
I have an
the
April
correct
14.
one, but I think it was maybe referenced in the approval incorrectly.
April? Yeah.
Yeah, I can give you this copy. And I can show it.
Just, yeah.
I can show it on my presentation if I need to. And I can hand to the clerk
Yeah.
the May 25th site plan that we would request be referenced instead of,
Can we put that up so we can see that?
it's on,
So if you would point to what you're referencing.
yes, ma'am, thank you. So the accessory structure carport that's here, I believe in the reference to that setback, it calls for a 37-foot reduction to 37 feet, and that's a little bit different than what's actually on the revised site plan.
Mr. Rosen, you're going to need to speak up just a little bit. We can't quite hear you.
The 37 feet that's referenced in the consent agenda is the footage that was referenced in the original application. This revised site plan shows 16 feet instead, and so I'm suggesting that we either reference this site plan or that distance to make sure that that's accurate. And I can leave this copy of the site plan to be submitted.
Okay.
Sorry for not catching that sooner. That property adjacent to us is also owned by the applicant. I just want to make sure it's correct.
Okay, thank you. Can we make that, we'll just make that modification before we vote?
So for number 3 is the one we need to modify from
Yeah.
100 feet to 16 feet? Is that
No.
correct, Adam?
Can I see that?
So it's 37 changed down to 15, right?
16.
It's
16.
37, needs to be referenced to
bring my-
16 instead.
I need to bring my glasses, obviously.
16 and then reference the site plan?
Yeah.
On May, whatever.
And the May, reference the updated site plan date.
Yeah.
Madam Chair? If I could, importantly, he just referenced that his client also owns that other piece of property that would otherwise potentially be impacted, but I'm not sure if there's a significant impact at all, given the fact his client owns it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm fine with the stand on consent.
Okay, so let's amend the agenda for number 3 from 37 feet to 16 feet. And also make it subject to the site plan last revised May 25th,
May 25th, in
2022.
2022, and that
Okay.
is the site plan that was sent out with the notice letters.
Okay.
It just didn't get picked up somehow from initially applying.
Okay, got it. All right.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rosen.
Thank you. Sorry for that.
And Madam Chair and Board, I do have one resolution for the one that we put off consent. I think we can read it in with one little addition, and it can stay on consent.
Okay,
So let me reread that, okay?
okay.
Variance case of V55, C. Robert Neal, request a variance to increase the maximum allowable coverage from 40% to 57.7% in land lot 8 of the First District. Property is located on the south side of Windmead Park, east of Woodlawn Drive. The Board of Zoning Appeals recommends approval, subject to the existing gutters and downspouts go to the side drains for the new addition only. Is that correct? And that would be the only change.
Okay. I'm good with that. Yeah, we're good.
That's fine.
Okay. Madam Chair, are you entertaining a motion at this time?
Maybe.
Okay. In that case, I'll go ahead and try this. I'll go ahead and move that we approve the consent agenda as amended by comments from staff, including the revision to V55 to note that the requirement to tie the existing gutters and downspouts to drains is only for the new addition, and to further note that as to V59, that the distance between the nearest property line and one out structure is 16 feet, not 37 feet, as reflected on a survey dated May 25, 2022. And just as a point of privilege, I just want to note that as a person with a somewhat atypical last name, I've always pronounced the applicant for V50. I've always pronounced his last name Papliakos. I don't want him to get short of the syllable.
Maybe we should call the applicant up here and have them pronounce your name. I think it's Poplikos.
Do I have a second?
Papliakos? Okay.
Thank you.
You are correct, Mr. Bourne.
Please place your vote. The consent agenda passes 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Peterson?
All those folks on consent, you're free to go. Next case is variance case V42, Aqua Design Pools and Spas LLC. Request a variance to increase the maximum impervious coverage from 35% to 43% in land lot 279 of the 20th District. The property is located on the north side of Tarpley Place, west of Tarpley Lane. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case of V42? Let the record show there's no one opposed. Would the applicant please come forward to be sworn in? And before you move on to that piece of business, Madam Chair and Board, I did get a request for the applicant for V49, Jeff Phillips, to continue their case until next month. They are working towards the site plan revisions that Commissioner Boulogne had referenced. So I meant to ask this at the very beginning of the hearing, but I forgot.
Sure.
So I would ask the board to continue variance case V49 until your July variance hearing.
So moved.
Please vote. Passes 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
We ready to go?
Good afternoon, Board. Thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Faye Colbert from Aqua Design Pools and Spas, 6905 Allen Thomas Road, Cumming, Georgia. Sorry, I feel like, can y'all hear me? We're good?
Speak up just a little bit more.
Okay, how about that?
That's good.
All right, perfect. So on this residence, we are looking to install a good-sized swimming pool, not too big, not too little, about 650 square feet swimming pool. We are looking to install or to remediate the additional impervious to bring it back down to 35% to the allowed. Via dry wells to be approved through stormwater management. We are looking to install paver decking as well with a 4-inch concrete subbase as well as 1-inch sand to allow for proper drainage into the existing drainage easement that is behind the house. This drainage easement does serve for the community north of them or upstream, and it does go into a well or a drain in the backyard as well. Do we have any questions that I can help answer? Oh, and yes, the sign has been up, I promise, and a new sign has been posted before that. So lawnmowers really like to eat them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, yes, I noted the sign was up this weekend, so thank you. That was the principal concern. Then I had just a couple questions in regard to staff questions, including there's the drainage easement shown running down the right side of the property, correct?
Yes, sir, and all the way to the back or to
Okay.
the rear of the property.
And then there's a staff comment regarding the fact that they want the mitigation to be between the drainage easement and the improvements, as I understand it. And they're here, so I can ask them more questions about that. But I was just curious about that because it looked like you were putting something across the drainage easement. There's a reference to something there. It looks like wrap.
So there is currently riprap in that drainage easement to help filter the drain so that the drain doesn't get clogged. Our goal is to put in the 4-inch slick pipe, which is the green SDR 35 pipe to the dry wells that hook into the deck drains. That will allow for all of the deck water to be piped into the dry wells. So we are not putting the drains within that drainage easement. The drainage easement will be marked, and then the drain will be dug in next to their wooden deck, and then packed back in.
Can you just show us approximately where that drain will go relative to the?
Yes, I did. I prepared a plan with the drains on it for us.
Excellent.
Oh, there we go. You know how to open it this way. Okay, so if you see here, these are going to be our 2 drains to remediate the additional impervious. These green dots here represent the deck drains, as well as these over here represent the downspouts coming from the house. So we're catching the additional runoff from the house as well into these dry wells. So this right here will be from SDR 35 pipe, so that way nothing gets clogged at the corrugated pipe. From here, all the way down and around. Right here will be there is approximately about 4 feet between here and that drainage easement. I know it's kind of hard to see because of that blue line there. Just enough room to squeeze in the pipe without being into that drainage easement.
So specifically, the dry wells are where? I just want to make
Oh,
sure
I'm
I
sorry.
understand that.
The blue dots.
Oh, the
right
blue dots are the dry wells?
Yes, sir. And they are connected.
Okay, well, those seem to comply with the request from the stormwater management. So with that, I'll just offer the applicant to anybody else with any questions.
I do appreciate the annotation that you brought with you today. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And then let me just ask you, I think somewhere referenced on here a sidewalk and can you comment on what the existing stone is within the 20-foot drainage easement?
It is flagstone, like broken flagstone. It's not like a paver surface or anything. It's existing all the way across. If we need to remove it, that's perfectly fine. We can do that. The homeowners were hoping to keep it because it is their way to their driveway to the back.
Okay, and then there's a reference to the word sidewalk that concerned me.
Okay.
Do you see that? It's in the lower right corner.
Oh, this one right here?
Yes.
That's an existing sidewalk as well, that the homeowners had there that connect to that part of the yard.
But it's not a concrete walk, it's stone and/or stepping stones, basically?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Can I just confirm with stormwater management that this is sufficient?
Yes, it's fine.
You're fine?
And it's allowed.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm prepared to go ahead and make a motion, unless there's anything else any of you would like. Okay. In that case, my motion will be to approve the variance as requested, subject to the all staff comments, including stormwater management comments.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All right, please place your votes. Pass 4-0. Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Russell, would you like for me to give this to the clerk so it's on record?
Yes,
Thank you.
please.
Okay, next case is variance case V58, Vista Commercial Properties LLC, who request a variance to waive the 40-foot landscape screening buffer adjacent to residentially zoned property to the south and west in land lot 210 of the 20th District. The property is located at the southeast corner of Greer's Chapel Road and Cobb Parkway. The applicant's representative is present. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case V58? Nope. Let the record show there's no one opposed.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Parks Huff with the law firm of Sams, Larkin and Huff, and I represent the applicant in regards to this case. There's the subject property. One of your charges is to grant variances in cases where there's size, shape, and topography. We've got a size, or a shape rather, and a topography issue in this case. You can see it's a triangular shaped piece of property. It sits at the intersection of Greer's Chapel Road and 41. For those that are aware of Cobb County DOT projects that are moving forward, Greer's Chapel is going to be basically, well, it is the Barrett reliever. It's going to be a parallel route. They are building a bridge over 75, so you will be able to go on Greer's Chapel Road all the way to Town Center Mall without getting on Barrett Parkway. So this intersection is going to change, obviously, as that project moves forward, just for reference. The property was zoned general commercial, and I believe it has not gone through zoning. I believe it has been general commercial for a long period of time, which is what is consistent with what they've done along 41. You can see the general commercial to the north and how it doesn't really respect zoning line, property lines. They basically, back in the day, put a bunch of GC along 41 because it made sense. So this was a general commercial piece of property. The other things to note is to the south is an RM12. And you can see one of the questions is buffering for the RM12 and any impact there. And you can see there's a cul-de-sac at the end, and actually the units face 41 and aren't adjacent to us. You do have an R80 piece between us going to the west, and then you have a water tank also that's on R80 piece, but it's actually obviously owned by the Water Authority and is a utility. There you can see, this is very important to understand, this is a land use plan, and you can see the Community Activity Center goes back on that R80 piece. It's owned by an investment investors, and presumably they're going to looking at utilizing it for something other than R80. It's a Community Activity Center on the land use plan. It's sandwiched between an RM12, other GCs, and civic uses with the water tower there. So it is unlikely to remain R80 such. The other issue is topography. And again, that's written into your code that you grant variances when there's size, shape, and topography. In this case, you have the most extreme topography I think I've ever dealt with. You can see there is 1184 at the bottom left, and then 1124 is basically the back of the building. So you've got 60 feet of fall in a very short distance. You can see the topo lines here. This is a extremely, topographically challenged piece of property. And you can see there the cul-de-sac for the multifamily and how we don't impact them at all either. This store is complete and is built and has been sitting this way for how long? almost 2 years waiting. There's been some utility issues and everything. This is the last piece to get their CO, and they have came to me after talking to Dave Braden, or excuse me, not Dave Braden, or not Carl, but the county arborist, and was asked how to install the 40-foot buffer that is on the landscape plan. I'm going to get to the landscape plan in a second, but this is, the camera cannot do it. I know Mr. Bloin was out there, but these pictures show the top of the hill there that's 60 feet up, and you really can't get an idea of how steep that topography is. This gives you an idea of the soil conditions. It is just, it's soil conditions that wouldn't grow anything, and there's no real way to amend it. You can't put soil on top of it because it would just simply come down the hill. So this is the landscape plan that was put together by the engineer and went through plan review. And the question was sent back to Dave Griffin at County Arborist, this really can't be planted. What do you want us to do? And I actually had a conversation with him, and he said, I want you to apply for a variance to remove the buffer. And so that's what we are doing here, because he recognizes that, number one, it can't be planted. Number two, you create separations with topography and with plantings and things like that. We couldn't plant a big enough tree that it would actually do anything on a buffer. I mean, it's going down a hill there at the top. I handed you the blown up version of this because one of the things I also wanted you to note is the circles that are, I guess I can't, there are circles that are existing trees. Yeah, let's see. Can I, see like that circle right there? If you can see where the cursor is, those are existing trees. So there are trees, very mature trees on the property line that sometimes are on our eyes, sometimes on the other, but that's a canopy. Those trees are existing trees. Those will remain, of course. It's the planting of that slope that's just not feasible. Your professional staff has reviewed it and recognizes that it's not feasible. And so we are asking for a variance from that. And my client, as I said, this store has been completed, been sitting there, not able to serve customers that drive along 41, and he'd like to open it, and this is the last little piece that needs to be addressed. My client is an operator of convenience stores. He's respects the engineers that put together the plans and the contractors that do it. And when this was put together, it should have been dealt with in the beginning, and a variance should have been filed in the very beginning, not at the very end when people realized that it just wasn't possible. But I think I can state from my personal conversations with your county arborist that this is what they asked us to do, is apply for a variance to remove this buffer. I said, is there any fencing? Is there any additional landscaping or anything you want there instead or anything? He said, no, I just want it removed because it can't really be dealt with in a 50-foot buffer. So I am glad to answer any questions that you have, but you can see the pictures, you can see those trees at the top there, the mature trees that are there. And in terms of creating separation, the grade differential for the property behind us that's undeveloped, that's in a community activity center, we're not impacting them with the huge grade differential. I'm sure that they would prefer that we start operating because it doesn't look good to have a store that's been sitting there not operating. So glad to answer any questions you have. My client's here to answer any questions you have. Appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you.
If Matt Davis is here, if he'd please come forward. Hi, thank you for being here today.
Yes, ma'am.
And can you state your name and what you do?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Matt Davis. I'm the county arborist for Cobb. I'm the arborist for the west half of the county.
Okay, great. So what is your perspective on this site and this buffer area?
So I agree with everything that he said. I think his pictures speak mostly to it. When this site was originally excavated. Our aerial photos go back and show the site was excavated around 20 years ago, and it was, essentially cut into the side of a rock wall. Based on that, just the physical limitations of actually being able to plant trees in that site are astronomical. It's very difficult just from the topography. Soil, there's barely any topsoil. You can see what the growth has been on that side of that hill for the last 20 years is, like I say, some grasses, some minor things, and now being overcome by kudzu. So from a feasibility standpoint, just to plant, it's not very feasible. And then potentially you run the risk of, if you do attempt to plant trees there in the future, those trees don't have enough soil to be established. Potentially you could run the risk of those trees blowing down the hill, falling down the hill, tumbling down towards the building. So yeah, I don't think there's any way to plant it with trees. I wouldn't recommend planting it with trees, and I wouldn't attempt to plant it with trees.
Well, there, as I understand it, is a tree fund in the county that,
Yes, ma'am.
so could you elaborate on how that would work?
To my limited knowledge, and like I say, I don't administer the tree fund. Essentially, it works in if there are limitations on the site to where the developer can't fully meet the planting requirements for the tree ordinance, then they are allowed to recompense those trees, pay into the county tree fund. We submit that, and it's distributed, my understanding, to Keep Cobb Beautiful and some other areas, but I don't know the details of that exactly. I don't operate it, so I don't know the details of it.
I know I haven't asked you this yet. Do you have calculations that you've done to see what would be the cost to the developer?
I have not done the calculations, but it would be a simple matter of just referring to the original tree plan, counting the numbers, and then applying a set dollar amount to it.
So is it just limited to trees itself? There's all sorts of elaborate plantings here. I don't know exactly how it works.
So for the tree ordinance, it's strictly trees. You may see some shrubs incorporated into there because there's sometimes zoning requirements for street frontage that requires a landscape enhancement strip where those are put on the plan. We check them and inspect them as a courtesy to the zoning department, but we don't necessarily apply the tree ordinance to those shrubs necessarily. It only applies to the trees themselves.
Do you feel like this, based on what you know about this site, is the best way to go is to have the developer donate to the tree fund?
I don't see any way that they could physically plant the 40-foot buffer because, he was showing the topography. When you scale back that 40-foot area, you've got about 40 foot of rise in that 40-foot area. So you're dealing with approximately a 45-degree slope on solid rock. So even if you were feasibly to say, okay, plant some buffer trees, you would have to bring them closer to the building. And it from the perspective on the hill, it would provide no visual buffer whatsoever.
And even if there were plantings done, it would not help the undeveloped parcel visually because it's so low, right?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any further questions?
I have a question. I said yes, I keep voting myself. So when you go back to the picture showing the, that area with the, not that one, it was another one, this one, in this area here, is there anything, because, you're looking at this right now with a lot of garbage that gets stuck in there, which I believe isn't very attractive to the area. And when you have something that's sort of wild and undeveloped like this, is there anything that could be planted, like ground cover, that could take care of at least some of the look? Because there was another picture before this. Yeah, and I guess go to the one with the building to show the building. So it just, in my opinion, doesn't look very aesthetically pleasing. So is there something that can be planted ground cover that would take hold, other than like maybe ivy or?
Theoretically, yes, but my argument against that would be you've already got established ground cover that is protecting against any potential erosion right now. So in order to install new ground cover, you would have to spray dead the entire hillside, strip it down of the live plant material that's there right now, potentially amend the soil on a 45-degree slope, hope it holds, and then try to plant something in it and hope that it has enough soil to remain viable.
Is there anything at the, instead of going up into that slope, is there anything at the base that could be done, or is that just as rocky?
It's all rock.
It's all rock.
Yes, ma'am. There's, like I say, what you see there is not a product of maintenance. That's a product of nature. There's not sufficient topsoil to support larger plant life on that hillside.
I guess I'm just feeling like there's, I don't know, maybe there could be something put on, we can't even monitor that. It just doesn't, this is a brand-new building, it's rather attractive, and then this hill behind it, I've seen these before, that just fill with garbage, and it's just really unattractive to the whole area, so, I don't know. Kind of stuck on that one. Maybe someone else has an idea. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't purport to have any ideas, I just have questions, but
Yes.
One thing I noticed yesterday, first of all, I concur with you. I agree with you that view shed's really not an issue terribly in this regard, in the sense of being concerned about residential neighbors and their view for a reason that they own the land behind here, and if it remains undeveloped, it's going to be difficult to impact the view shed of the neighbors behind there. So my concern flipped yesterday when I got out there because I noticed a number of boulders that were sitting very near to the parking surface area. So my principal concern shifted to making sure those boulders don't come down the hill and hit anybody in a parking lot, or that is my principal concern. So what is the best way to keep things from coming down the hill short of building some retaining walls up there?
I don't know. That's outside of my area of expertise.
Because, I mean, you can see one right here in the picture that's up right now, and if we have any pictures from behind the building, I think there was a picture of the sidewalk. You can see large pieces of rock near there, too. I seem to recall somewhere from when I first moved down here, hearing about kudzu, the whole idea was to prevent erosion in the first place, and it seems like they have an ample amount of that on the left-hand side. Is that fair?
Fair to say that there's kudzu on the side?
Yes.
Yes, sir. There's a significant amount of kudzu.
Okay, and then in the center, it seems more like just overgrown weeds or ferns of some kind in the center, and it seems like the center's directly behind the building is a funnel where the overall topo is not nearly as severe as 45%. Is that about right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so as an arborist, what's your idea of the best way to prevent erosion out there? Is it just to...
The best way to prevent erosion as it sits right now is to leave it alone. Like I say, when you disturb soil and you expose mineral soil, then you incur erosion. Right now, there's no mineral soil exposed, and what limited soil is exposed is covered with plant material that's grown there right now naturally.
Okay, so to put a condition on this, if we granted the variance, to put a condition on it that they require the natural ground coverings in place there to remain, that would be appropriate?
Outside of my expertise.
But you just said keep the ground cover that's already there.
Yeah, but when it comes to, recommendations to what they should and should not leave, I mean, like I say, if you disturb mineral soil, you're going to incur erosion, so.
If it's required, if we require that they contribute something to some fund, how much money are they going to have to contribute?
Like I say, we'd have to go back and look at the tree plan, see exactly how much density is calculated in that buffer, and then we would apply that based on the formulas in the tree ordinance.
Any rough idea?
For a 2-inch tree, caliper is $220 per tree. For a 4-inch caliper tree is around $800 per tree.
So this would be in the thousands of dollars.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anything further?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, appreciate it. Anybody have any other questions?
So
Would you-
I guess the applicant, I have a question.
Is your applicant here?
Or I guess he represents him.
Yeah, my client's here, but if I need to ask him, I'll ask him.
So one of the, looking at the picture before this, with the boulders, with the possibility of some boulders coming down, and also it just looks, I just think it just aesthetically doesn't look well. Would the applicant be willing to put in like a low-level retaining wall that goes along this back of the property? This would also help that if any boulder or something gets loose, it'll hit the retaining wall before it hits any cars that are parked there.
Yeah, and my client, while this discussion was going on, said, hey, one of the thoughts would be doing a fence along that, especially that left-hand side, as you face it, the left-hand side, that would, create a visual barrier. I have a question, and I throw it out. I mean, you could do like a 4-foot wooden privacy fence, but I almost wonder whether you want to do a black coated vinyl chain link fence. I know sometimes we think of those as not very attractive, but if it's a black vinyl coated fence, but I mean, I don't want to try to get into what y'all think is attractive or unattractive, but that along that side right there might be a way that you would create a visual barrier and potentially a safety barrier. But let me ask that if you do want us to do a fence, if you can make it, like, give us some time to do it so that he can get his CO. So he doesn't have to put the fence in beforehand, if that's possible. And if I can, he also had some comments and questions about the tree recompense. It's my understanding he's already gone through that tree recompense. He's done some additional plantings out front. So if he needs to pay into the bank, he's glad to do that. But it's calculated as part of the whole project. And so I think that might have already been done. Because he mentioned that he's had additional plantings out front that you did that would have been a result of you can't, that's your recompenses. The landscape plan had, 10 trees, he planted 20 or something like that up front. So some of that, I think, might have already been calculated outside of this issue with the buffer.
Well, I don't have, I guess I don't really care what kind of a retaining wall is put in. That would be up to the district commissioners to the type. So I'll leave that up to her. I just think that would be a really nice screening to cut off the way it looks. And I think it would just add something to the to gas station. The stone that's at the bottom of the base of the building. Could you continue something like that? Would the applicant be willing to do that?
Well, retaining walls are structured, that's going to require a whole different issue, and to do that, you're going to have to require a foundation. I certainly am not. I would be very, very leery of agreeing to a retaining wall, because then you have to have footings, and we don't know the soil conditions there. That could be kind of like a big, but I mean, a fence we can do. In that area right there, it drops down and then kind of, let's see if I can get it does kind of flatten out towards the bottom right at the corner. So steep and then kind of flattens out a little bit right there.
Again, I'll leave that up to the,
And is that the boulder you were referencing, Mr. Blouin?
It's one of several.
All right, any further comments or questions?
Sorry. My only thought is I do agree that it might just be a good idea to put a simple fence around the back just for appearance sake, and let a fencing company make the recommendation as to what works best in that area. Because putting in a foundation wall could be problematic based on the stone already there.
All right, I would like to make a motion to approve this variance, subject to a fence being installed. I'm perfectly happy with it being a black plastic fence type. 90 days. You can decide the precise location, but I do agree, I think it would aesthetically be more appealing than what's there now. So that is my motion.
Second, and just two questions, if I could, Madam Chair. So would that be the 90-day date, would that start from today, or would that start from the issuance of the CO?
John, how long typically does a CO take?
Well, it sounds like they're at the stage where they can get the CO tomorrow if this variance is approved. So I think normally when the board puts in a date, it's from the date of the hearing. It's from today.
Okay. I think 90 days from today should be
Okay.
sufficient.
And would it be acceptable to say shall install and maintain, rather
Yes.
than just simply install?
Yes.
And can we treat the motion as amended as such?
Yes.
Thank you, then.
Thank you.
I second that as amended. Thank you.
All right, place your vote, please. It passes 4-0. Thank you. That concludes our agenda. We have a little bit of housekeeping. Have y'all had time to look at the minutes? Okay. If so, I'll entertain a motion for approval. For both, we have two sets of minutes. We have our meeting and our work session. The May 11 meeting and the June 13th work session.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Minutes approved, 0-4. Does anybody else have anything else, any other business to discuss at this point in time? Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Vote. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate it.